Teaching and Learning Committee meeting of the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners. I see that our Chair Emeritus is with us. Good afternoon, Chair Chinya.
Good afternoon.
And I'm not sure if anyone else from our committee is present. Any other committee members with us?
Commissioner Griffin is here. Hello, everyone.
Hello, Commissioner Griffin. Didn't see your icon, so I hope you're doing well. Good afternoon. And we are ready to get started. Welcome, everyone. Hope everyone is safe and healthy. The first item on our agenda this afternoon is the wholeness update surrounded around our R3 plan. So I know that I just saw Dr. Warren. I saw her face. I'm sure there's a team of folks that are presenting, but I did see your face, so take away.
Wonderful. Thank you very much. And good afternoon, commissioners and members of the public. It's great to be here. So today's presentation is going to give just a brief overview and reminder of what we committed to as city schools in our 3 Rs plan. So that's the Reconnect, Restore, and Reimagine plan that launched us into this new school year, sort of mid-pandemic still, but hopefully in the restoration and recovery phase as well. So we're going to move ahead. Go ahead, Laura. I want to say before I go on that there are other people here. I'm joined by Ms. Patricia Roberts-Rose from the Office of Special Education, Ms. Ashley Collins from the Whole Child Office, Ms. Chanel Williams from Teaching and Learning, and Ms. Tanisha Montgomery from my team, from the Whole Child team, to talk about athletics. So as we dive in, we have been asked always to align our work to the board's strategic priorities. And as we looked at our presentation and what we've been doing in this area of work, we realized that really it aligns to all of the board's strategic priorities, which I think is sort of right, given that we're talking about the whole child here. So happy to have more of a conversation about that later, but we won't go deep into that right now. Okay, next slide, please. And next slide. Great. So as with other parts of the 3 Rs plan, this portion of the plan was guided by community input. There were a number of different opportunities for different members of the community, students, staff, families, community partners, and others to weigh in on what our priorities should be. Two things that we heard strongly and consistently were that people really wanted us to focus on making sure there was a positive school culture and climate in all of our schools this year. And then also a lot of concern about mental health and wellness, both for students and for adults. We also heard quite a lot of interest in and concern about students' social emotional learning, and an ongoing interest that we know is present in our community always around arts, enrichment, and athletics. So our plan was designed around these key pillars, which I think will become clear as we move through the presentation. So I just want to, as a refresher, walk through the key commitments that we made in our plan. So the first set of 4, the first one being around that culture and climate piece. So making sure that every school has a welcoming and inviting atmosphere for both students and families. And when we talk about that, we mean just from the minute people walk in the door, they feel that, and then they feel it throughout the building and all of their interactions with the school. The second piece was a commitment this year that we've made around engaging students in morning meeting consistently at the elementary level and advisory activities at the middle school and the high school level. And these are activities that we focus on in order to promote students' relationship building with their peers, with adults, and also their social and emotional well-being and skills. The third piece is around those mental health supports that we know not only need to be in place, but that both students and families know what they are and know how to access them. And then the fourth piece being a strong commitment to increasing access to mental health supports. So expanding that support throughout our schools. Other areas that we committed to focus on expanding enrichment and academic opportunities. So there are others in the plan, if you look at the 3Rs plan, that go into more detail around some key academic areas like math, so AP offerings, algebra, those types of things. Those are not covered here in this presentation. We're really sticking more to the arts and to enrichment. So one thing that we said we would do is make sure that every student has a full-time fine arts teacher in their school. Secondly, that every student would have access to fine arts programming through additional funding and partnerships with art-focused organizations or arts-focused. And then the third piece being every student having more sports offerings. And so that was partly a commitment to reach down more to the elementary level and the middle school level to provide more offerings to students in the lower grades as well as high school. Okay, so we're going to move from the plan into a quick update on our progress. I will kick us off by talking a little bit about the school culture and climate work that we're doing. This has been a really exciting and robust piece of work ever since the spring, where we've been, first of all, and I think some of you have seen this before, we did a lot of work to develop this set, you see at the bottom of the screen, the set of domains. So these are the key areas that we're drilling down into as we work to build a positive culture and climate in each school. Since we started the school year and some of this work happened again over the spring and summer, we rolled out the domains, but then followed that with professional development sessions for school leaders and other staff to help them get familiar with the domains. Then we provided summer stipends for teams at the school level to build their culture and climate plans and provided technical support to them, and then worked to integrate those plans into the school performance plans, because one of the things that we often hear is that there are too many different plans and they need to integrate with one another and live together. So we worked hard to make that happen here. And then we set aside $10,000 per school to support the implementation of the plans. And schools have been working to submit action plans for their $10,000 aligned to their culture and climate plans. Next slide, please. Another key area that we've really been working on for the past several weeks in particular is providing that support to schools to enable them to do social emotional learning, wholeness activities, first thing in the day. Usually it's morning meeting for elementary kiddos. And then when we get to the middle school level, they should be offered both the morning meeting time as well as at least once a week advisory. And then at the high school level, the expectation is that there be at least a 45-minute period once a week for advisory. So we have been building out activities that are both theme-based and developmentally appropriate to support teachers so that they can do these activities with their students, be it a morning meeting or an advisory. And as we move forward, we will be doing more integration between those wholeness activities and activities coming from the college and career readiness team. So we're working together to build out that curriculum. We also just held our first training last week for advisory champions. So we are stipending champions at each of the schools in grades 6 to 12 so that they have a person in their school that can help to move the work of advisory at the school level. That is moving along and gaining pace. You'll see at the bottom of the screen, this is just an example of what some of that wholeness curriculum looks like and how it's structured for the teachers who are taking advantage of that. And then it's a little hard to see here, but in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see a poster that was made by kindergartners actually at Thomas Jefferson Elementary and Middle School. They have been making a big push around Bullying Prevention Month at Thomas Jefferson, which is part of our larger district-wide commitment to addressing bullying during October. So this is Bullying Prevention Month, and even the kindergartners got into the action, and they all sort of signed on to the poster by outlining their hands, which I thought was incredibly cute. Okay, so moving on. With that, I am going to pass it over to Ms. Roberts-Rose to talk about mental health.
Hello, I'm Patricia Roberts-Rose, Coordinator for School Social Work. So for mental health, we have worked collaboratively with all the other mental health providers in our school buildings to develop student wellness support teams. Cross collaboration with school psychologists, school counselors, school social work, wholeness specialists, family community engagement, and expanded school mental health. The reason that we have the school wellness team is because we wanted to re-engage our students and make sure that we are meeting their mental health needs as they return back from virtual learning and getting reacclimated to in-person work. The focus is on school-wide assemblies, small group supports, preventive activities, and classroom observations and supports. Some creative ways we've used to engage the students is videos, introducing the team, posters, QR codes where the students can scan and get a link to get connected with the mental health providers. There is a video in the notes if you can click on that to share an example of that video. To share the audio, the computer audio.
Is the audio still?
I can't hear it.
Let's see. One moment, please.
Laura, if you're muted, we're not going to hear it.
Gotcha. Okay, so I'm unmuted now. Let me
So
try from the beginning.
Should work.
See? How is that now?
Laura, if you send me the link, I could perhaps, this is Christian Game. I could perhaps hear it, but I'm not sure. I can't hear it.
Okay, Christian, I'll forward you the link now to see if you can share it with the group. One moment.
Okay, you can keep going
So,
until I get it.
Yeah, I'll just talk through the premise of this video. This was one of the more creative videos created by our team at Fort Worthington. Of course, they used Family Matters as a theme for their video, and this is just a creative way to introduce the mental health providers in the school to the school community. What we noticed is that at some schools, students did not know who the providers were in order to engage them to access supports. The diagram here just also illustrates all the different supports that the different providers, these are just three different, the main providers, which are the school social work, school psychologist, and school counselor that are primarily in the schools, the different supports that they can provide, and then the cross collaboration parts that they can provide as well. And we made these into placemats for all the schools, so every school has these as well. So if we can't do the video, we can.
I think I actually found the way that the video can be presented with audio. I think I found the button right here. So okay. I will try one more time.
Okay. Thank you.
No problem. There we go.
It's a rare condition this day and age to read any good news on the newspaper page. Love and traditions of the grand design, some people say it's even harder to find. Well, then there must be some magic clue inside these gentle walls. 'Cause all I see is a tower of dreams, real love bursting out of every scene. It's the bigger love
So that's just an illustration of one school's way that they presented their team to their school community so the students would know who they were with their mask on, of course. We can go to the next slide. In addition to our mandated services, of course, that all of our school-based clinicians have to provide, particularly the school social workers and the school psychologists, we also do the things under the school wellness support team, including the monthly themed mental health assemblies or either grade level meetings, morning announcements, classroom activities, and providing family resources either on a Google Classroom or on a school social media site so that the families can stay engaged. And I'll turn it over to Ashley.
Hi, I'm Ashley Collins. I'm the mental health coordinator for the Expanded School Behavioral Health Program. There's a couple data points here, but I just wanted to say that this program, all the clinicians also participate in the student wellness teams at all the schools that they're assigned. And so in addition to all of those activities, they've also been able to see about 3,000 students since the beginning of the school year. And there's been, I think at this point, there's 50 staff and service trainings that have been offered by our clinicians at the schools. So that's next slide.
Good afternoon, everybody. Looks like this is mine. I am Chanel Howard. I'm the Fine Arts Coordinator for these amazing Baltimore City Public Schools, and I'll be briefly talking to you about the arts opportunities. And this aligns with the commitment that every student will have a full-time fine arts teacher in their school. And so progress on that is that right now, currently 61% of schools offer students both visual art and music in alignment with the Fine Arts Strategic Plan goals for school year 22. We have increased staffing for fine arts across 4 arts disciplines, including visual art, music, dance, and theater. And then ESSER funds have, in conjunction with the concentrations of poverty funds, helped to make this a reality for schools upon creation of vacancy at the school level. And this is ongoing work. Next slide, please. And here's just a pictorial representation of where we are climbing to. And I want to just point out here that this is our data reflecting the staffing for this year, which means that this was recruiting that happened during the pandemic. So it was not the easiest thing to do, but we are making strides towards our goals. And so you'll see that there's an increase from 133 certified teachers in visual art to 141. From 102 to 107 in music. We're making the climb incremental in dance from 5 to 7 educators, and then in drama and theater from 11 to 18. Next slide, please. And then this one is in alignment to our commitment to every student will have access to additional fine arts programs through additional funding and partnerships with arts-focused organizations. And the progress to that is that our CEO and our board approved 200 per student allocation according to last year's enrollment numbers for each of our schools. And that alignment has allowed us to connect partner organizations with schools to provide additional fine arts opportunities for all of our snickerdoodles. We have a pilot for fine arts micro programs that will be at Abbotston Elementary School. Principal Miles will be expanding strings in her building, and she's shifted the scheduling at her building to align to all second graders being able to take instrumental string classes. And we are partnering with her to provide out of school time instruction for those snickerdoodles in addition to snickerdoodles from the surrounding community. Arts as Healing Initiative connects students, principals, and teachers to the power of arts to help meaningfully engage our students. And so at the board meeting last week, I think it was, one of the things that I mentioned was our Arts as Healing Initiative, which is helping teachers of other disciplines leaning to how the arts can help provide more engagement opportunities within their particular content. So it's not at all trying to get a language arts teacher to teach an art lesson. It's figuring out where those organic connections are and providing the professional development for those teachers to adequately provide those pathways into their own instruction for students. Arts as Healing is also a series of professional development opportunities in learning and understanding how the brain functions when on arts. And that looked like a professional development that will be reoffered again in February, I believe, called Therapeutic Arts Making. And that's a series that will also be followed up with our friends at the Arts and Minds Lab at Johns Hopkins University. Dr. Tasha Golden will be presenting in February also a session on what trauma looks like in classrooms and giving teachers strategies toward us identifying and then helping to identify what the next steps would be. I think that's it for me. Next slide. Dr. Warren.
This one's actually Ms. Montgomery. Are you there, Tanisha?
Yes, ma'am. Good afternoon, everyone. So we have, in line with the work that we've put forward, we are looking and have started the process to increase academic and athletic opportunities for our students in middle school and elementary schools. Right now, currently, our high school seasons and athletic seasons are in the championship phases, which kind of allows us some opportunity to highlight those areas with our middle school and elementary school programming to see if there's some additional interest there. We are working to finalize the health and safety guidance, specifically for middle and elementary athletics, as it may look a little different since a lot of it is an extension of the school day, and some of those students and athletes will be participating with peers inside of their buildings. So really working through what that looks like and finalizing that information. We have created a resource guide for the middle and elementary school programs that can kind of go through the sports, the athletic offerings, the things that they can do in intramurals as an extension of physical education with an advisor that could happen after school. And then we are also discuss some options for some weekend programming. There will also be 3 opportunities for students and schools to be involved: interscholastic, where they will participate against peers from other schools. That is primarily targeted for our middle grades. Intrascholastic, which will be in school, in-house, so it may be grade level to grade level with various sports and activities. And then we are also hosting a series of sport and activity interest clinics that will extend for elementary and middle school and a little bit of the high school, but primarily the target on elementary and middle. And those will be coordinated with our office as well as some of the partners that we have that have been integral in our school communities. We had a meeting last week with all of our elementary and middle school traditional schools who were interested in finding information, and we had over 120 registrants for the meeting. From that meeting, an interest and intent survey went out for them to complete, providing us a landscape of the information, such as if they have access to fields, community space, and what their school community is interested in. And we are also finalizing the information with our landscape analysis for future programming with Baltimore Promise. And Dr. Warren, I'll take it back to you.
Great, thank you. So as you can see, there's a lot going on, but I would say that we are also still very much in the early stages of this work around the 3Rs plan. Most of it is in some way or another building on work that we've been doing in the past as part of our Blueprint for Success, our commitment to student wholeness. So we're just going deeper, and we are moving as fast as we can around particularly issues of culture and climate. So our schools are probably as we speak, still uploading their culture and climate plans. We will be going deeper into the advisory work over the coming weeks and months as we are able, both with money coming on board And as the sort of hiring situation permits, we will be adding more mental health clinicians to our schools, providing that support that Ms. Williams talked about around social emotional learning and arts, so arts for healing, more sports activities, so that was just spoken of. And then we will, complete that landscape analysis and really put forward a more robust long-term strategy for the middle school and at some point elementary school athletics as well. And that concludes our presentation for now, but we would be more than happy to take any questions that you might have.
Thank you for the presentation, everyone. I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have any questions, thoughts. Commissioner Chinya or Commissioner Griffin?
I have one that just comes to mind mainly because of just the current situation in the news, and that's the the approval of the COVID vaccination for younger children. What, if anything, are we feeling that might do to impact in some of the work that you're talking about, especially around the athletic piece? Because I know for the high schools, we were asking students that participated in programs that were between schools to be vaccinated.
That's a great question. Thank you, Commissioner Chinya. We don't actually have the answer to that yet. I think those are still ongoing conversations because all of that is sort of still in the works. And even as Ms. Montgomery was pointing out, we're still working out some of the other fundamentals of the health and safety guidance for the elementary and middle school, because it is a little bit different from the high school athletics experience. So I don't want to comment on that prematurely, but definitely we will certainly let you all know as soon as we have a better sense of that. But that's something that I think Chief Perkins-Cohen will probably be leading on.
Thanks. I just an alert, because I know many of the middle schoolers participate in some things outside of school, and they are, they're requiring the testing and all those kind of things. So just especially around if we do beyond intramural kind of things.
Commissioner Griffin?
Yes, I did have two questions. One, thank you so much for this update. It's really good to hear what has been happening in these spaces so far. My first question is, of the 50 trainings that happened with staff, I was curious about how many staff members attended. And with the graph that was shown and talking about how the increase in hiring, which I know right now is super challenging, and I can only imagine recruiting during the height of the pandemic too. I was curious if there's a bar or goal for each of those positions. Perhaps some two main questions that popped up for me.
You were cutting in and out for me a little bit, Commissioner, but if I heard it right, the first question was about I think it was the mental health trainings and how many staff actually attended those, which I would have to defer to the team on that. And then I think the second question, and Ashley will, I think, just popped up and we'll answer that one. And then the second question was, and sorry, now I lost it. I had it. Can you remind me what the second question was?
Sure. The second question was about the goal line or the bar for each of the different arts positions that we've increased hiring for.
Right.
I was just curious about, the number for those that we're looking to get to.
Okay, great. Thank you. Thanks for recapping that. So we'll start with Ashley and then we can go to Chanel.
Hi. So I pulled that report. We have a database system that we keep all that information in, and I just pulled it when you asked the question. And the number of non-students, so that would be teachers, is over 1,100 in those 50 trainings.
So over 100 total, or
No, 1,100.
1,100? Okay, I couldn't hear you. Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Thank you for that, because I'm curious about, goals for both the student interaction with mental health clinicians and mental health staff, and then also for the teachers attending training, like any goals around that. I just have, a curiosity of understanding where the bar might be set, and then that helps me understand where to place the updates that you all are giving us as well.
So to address that, we have deliverables that are required of all of our clinicians in each school. And for in-service trainings, I think there's 2 per school. So we count numbers of trainings, and we don't have a specific deliverable per number of people attending. And so right now our in-service training goal is 2 per school that each clinician is in, and we're in 130 schools.
So just to note that is what Ashley's speaking to is specifically the expanded school behavioral health program, which is the partnership program where, no, it's okay. I just want to make sure we differentiate, because I think that Ms. Roberts-Rose might want to add a little bit from the related services perspective as well.
Right.
Yeah, go ahead.
So for related services, from related services, I'm speaking to school social worker and school psychologist. They, all of them conduct needs assessments, and this year we changed the term to wellness assessments in each school and determine the needs of every school. So the training that has to be done at every school, of course, is child abuse and suicide prevention. And then depending on the needs of that school, other things may or may not be done in a school, because every school's needs are not the same. And as far as training our staff, we are mandated by the union to provide them 15 CEU opportunities a year, and each of those CEU opportunities have different learning objectives for that. We did just, and we offered them additional CEU opportunities outside of the ones that we provide from other vendors, definitely on self-care, on transitioning youth back into school, engaging families. Those were in addition to and exceeding what we typically would offer.
Thank you both so much. That is really helpful. And I think that's the gap that I needed filled in for me to really understand, in this moment, how we're meeting the needs of both students and staff when it comes to mental health supports. And that really does fill in the gap for me. So I'll be looking forward to future updates on like how we're doing with interacting with and interfacing with the students on the student end, and any outcomes from that, and then also just hearing more about how staff are continuing to engage in some of these CU opportunities that come up as well. Thank you both for that information.
The only other thing I would add to that, Commissioner, is just that in addition to that work that's being done by the mental health clinicians, there is the ongoing support provided both by the human capital team, creating ongoing opportunities for staff at both the district and the school level to participate in different types of activities and training that support their own self-care and well-being, as well as training opportunities that are offered by the student wholeness team, which is coming at things a little bit more from the perspective of social emotional learning, restorative practices, healing-centered care. So all of those are sort of related, but on the spectrum of the types of training and supports that we're providing. And I wanted to make sure that we give Ms. Williams a chance to talk about the arts positions as well.
Thank you, Dr. Warren. Commissioner Griffin, in terms of a number that we are trying to reach to specifically, we don't have a number. We do have a goal, though, that all of our students in grades pre-K through 5 will have equitable access to the arts. So one of the more concrete targets that we have is that by school year 2022, we had indicated that 100% of our schools with grades pre-K through 5 would be staffed with a visual art and a music teacher. So that's why you see like the bar graph represented as it is. And sometimes the number changes as the number of schools and programs change in the city. So, like we started out, when I first started this, we had 182 schools and programs when I first started in this position. And I think now we're down to about 172 schools and programs. So we choose not to represent it in terms of like, we're going to reach the goal of 200 visual arts teachers. Instead, we want to say that we want to make sure that we're giving all of our students in the elementary grades access to all four art forms. And then in middle grades, we want to make sure that we're allowing our snickerdoodles the opportunity to specialize in programs. And then in high school, we want to make sure that we are giving those snickerdoodles the opportunity to have depth of study. So we choose not to give it a specific number, more so thinking about it globally in terms of a program. Does that make sense?
That makes perfect sense. It helps me understand the why behind the numbers, and that it's a bit more of a moving target than a stagnant goal. So I do appreciate that context, and I also look forward to seeing, how you all continue to move forward in this space. I'm very excited about the work that's being done and has already been accomplished, and kudos to you all for being able to increase these numbers, even in some of the lower areas of dance and whatnot, because it's really important that our snickerdoodles, as you say, which I love, get the opportunity to experience these different areas in the arts. So thank you so much for that explanation. It helps me understand it better. And I look forward to future updates too.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. You're very welcome.
Commissioner Griffin, have you received a copy of the Fine Arts Strategic Plan?
I do not think that I have, no.
Okay. Can we all make sure that Commissioner Griffin receives that?
Yes, sir. I'll send it to Christian.
Thank you so much.
Yeah, just so that as you're one of the newer commissioners, you're not new anymore, Commissioner Griffin, but you're one of the newer commissioners. I think it's important that you have that information, which kind of frames where we are as a school system as it relates to the arts and the underinvestment, but our work to ensure that our young people have what they need and our communities have what they need. So I think it's an important resource that you should have.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
You're welcome. There was one question that, well, I have some thoughts around the school culture and climate with these climate plans. So is it that every school has a climate plan as it relates to the 3R plan? Is that correct?
Yes. Yeah.
I want to know how they're monitored. What is our plan for monitoring those, and how do we disperse equitable and relevant support to schools that may need more than some of our others? I'm sure that we're looking at specific data points and targets or different things for specific school communities. So I would be interested in knowing that. And also, Edward Parham, if you all don't mind turning your camera off, it's just a little distracting. You'll be able to still see us, but it's distracting with you all present right now. If you all don't mind just turning the camera off, that would be helpful for us. Really appreciate that.
So thank you for that question. We are envisioning essentially a sort of a three-tiered approach to the work on culture and climate moving forward. The overarching tier is the district-wide work and the support that we will provide to all schools throughout the year and the coming year. So that includes things like professional development opportunities, resources, newsletters, just ideas about best practices that we're seeing both in our own district and elsewhere. So that's something everybody will get. Then we'll be working at the network level with IOEDs and managers to support groups of principals to come together in their peer groups and look at how they're doing with their implementation of their plans. So the goal is that we don't just create a plan and it sits on a shelf or in the computer somewhere, but that we're regularly checking in through those CLN meetings on how people are doing. Not only are they actually achieving their goals, but what are they struggling with? What are they finding success in? And how can they share that learning with one another for everybody's sort of benefit and improvement? And then the third piece is getting down to a more intensive level of support at the school level. So our team, along with others who have experience in culture and climate, like the managers, would be there and on hand to help schools that need it on a case-by-case basis. But we also plan to pick 24 schools that will really get a lot more intensive focus and coaching on a regular basis from a set of climate coaches that sit within in the wholeness office. So those 24 schools have not yet been selected. That's something that needs to happen in the coming weeks as we look at climate data, as we talk with ILEDs and chiefs and Dr. Santelises, and talk with principals themselves. So there has to be sort of that combination of the need for that support and also the readiness to absorb that coaching alongside what we know are often many different initiatives. So we want to make sure that when we do adopt the list of schools that we're focusing on for the coaching, that we're doing that in a way that's well coordinated with other initiatives that may be in those schools. So that's still a work in progress, but generally the vision for where we're heading with that sort of follow-up and accountability on the plan implementation.
Forgive me, my colleague was making an announcement overhead, so I didn't want that to be in, but I appreciate that. And would you all be able to just, I'm curious, as Commissioner Griffin was curious about a few things, I'm curious to know what those 24 schools are as they're identified for that intensified support. I would just like to track and follow them and how we're able to support them, and then what the impact is on our young people, on our students, on those communities as a result of our identification and our support provided to them. But in concert with my colleagues, I just want to say thank you to everyone that's working on this. I know that we are in an unprecedented year, but all of this work is extremely important to really yield some important gains for our young people, mentally, physically, socially, emotionally. I think it's really important that all hands are on deck as we're moving this work forward. So thank you all. Thanks to you, Dr. Warren, and thanks to your team, everyone that was with you today. Thank you.
Thank you. If I could just make one little footnote, Chair McFadden, which is that I wanted to acknowledge that the art that was throughout the presentation comes from students at Thomas Jefferson Elementary Middle School. So I just wanted to acknowledge that they were doing great art there, and it was fun to see and a good opportunity to share that with the board committee as well.
That's awesome. It would be incredible if all of our presentations could be filled with student artwork. As relevantly so. If it, aligns to whatever's being, discussed or whatever, I just think it's great to see that. It's a way that we're able to capture some of the beauty of our young people, even though we can't always see them virtually in settings like this. So I think it's great to see. So thank you for that. And shout out to Thomas Jefferson. Shout out to you all. Thanks, team. We're now ready for a grading policy update.
Thank you so much. Good afternoon, Commissioner McFadden. Great to see you. I'm going to be joined by Dr. Rachel Pfeiffer, who I believe will share the screen so that we can get up the presentation. Thank you.
Give me 1 second.
Sure, no worries.
Okay.
Well, thank you so much, Dr. Pfeiffer. So good afternoon. I'm Joan Dabrowski, Chief Academic Officer. Happy to be here this afternoon to share with the board some updates around some of the work we've been doing in the area of grading. So if we go to the next slide, the plan for this afternoon is to share just some of the context and recent work that informs this work. and to talk about particularly the support we are thinking about for our students who earned an NC, which I'll talk a bit about in just a moment, and then to share some graduation requirements per COMAR regulations. So with that, we'll go into the next slide to really highlight where this work, the work of grading, aligns with our board's strategic priorities. So you'll see priority 1, the importance of thinking about grading in the space of effective, relevant, and rigorous instruction, again, to inform our work with our students and to engage and prepare them for their future. Priority number 6, again, thinking about the educational programming that we provide across the city and making sure that there's high quality experiences, and grading and our grading work really centers in that space. And finally, priority 7, recognizing the importance of equity across all levels, and that the policies and practices and procedures that we do around this work make sure that we're providing for that really inclusive academic and professional environment. All right, so with that, let's talk a little bit about the policies that are really our grading work lives in. So we have 3 that we think about: IKA, which is our grading and reporting; IKEA, which is around promotion and retention in grades K through 12, and IKEB, which has to do with graduation standards. It's important that as we're talking about grading at this particular time and space, that we take a moment and understand the impact that COVID-19 had on our school year, just our previous school year, and the impact that it has on this school year. So again, Baltimore, like other urban districts, certainly brought a disruption from COVID, experienced that disruption, and in that space of teaching and learning, we know that the interruptions and challenges our students face were, as we continue to say, unprecedented. Despite those challenges, we stayed very focused on delivering the high quality teaching and learning, getting our students the devices and the internet connection so that we could have that virtual learning take place. We worked very hard to bring our students back in person and supported hybrid learning as well. Despite all of our efforts, we know that our students continue, and I'm going to say that in the present, to experience challenges and interruptions in their learning because of COVID-19. And so we come into this space of grading and this grading conversation knowing that the academics performance and the progress of social and emotional well-being, all of these things have been impacted. I think it's important to name that as we now move into some important just updates about some of our recent work. So last year, within the academics office, we convened a grading work group that was comprised of teachers, school leaders, and district staff. And this group really came together to look at the different policies and regulations connected to grading, and had a really important role in an adjusted regulation that we'll talk about in just a moment that we're calling the NC, which stands for not complete in our elementary and middle grades and no credit in our 9 through 12. And again, that work group, again, comprised of multiple colleagues, both school-based and district, continues to really inform this work and support this work so that we hear a wide range of perspectives. In summer of 2021, this previous summer, in response to the grading impact that we saw, we worked hard to expand our summer learning programs. And we really emphasized how we could support those students who received an NC. Additionally, in the realm of our grading work, we are in a place now where we are providing annual updates to our school leaders about guidance related to grading. So how we approach grades, how we monitor grades, how we report grades. So all of those pieces are shared, and ensuring that as we moved into this school year, that our schools and our district policies are aligned so that schools are developing their school-specific grading policies. They use policy IKA to guide their work. They must meet the expectations of the district's guidelines, but they can also have additional pieces to go above those minimum standards, right? We also know as we've approached this school year, we have intentional work around supporting the students who have what we're calling the NC on a report card, and how we're prioritizing their supports. And we are going to continue convening that grading work group because we know that there are other phases of the grading work that continue to be important for us. And so having that standing work group as a structure for how we go about having informed decisions continues to be important for us. So with that, let me go back and talk a little bit more about where and how we landed on NC. So again, last spring, following sort of the experience that we saw throughout the pandemic, we worked with that grading work group. We had stakeholder input, and we adjusted those grading practices to really avoid this notion of failing students. That sense of a punitive approach or unfairly retaining students for things that were well beyond their control. And rather than going with that approach, we really started to frame our thinking in this notion of how we were going to think about recovery as a multi-year effort, really to support students at a very personalized level, knowing that we have a number of students who have unfinished learning. And we knew that there were students who didn't earn the credits they needed. So again, there was a very strong philosophical belief of why we went with this direction of using an NC and instead of a failure or an unsatisfactory. So on the next slide, you'll see sort of what this really meant. What were the implications? So if you were in grades 2 through 8, having an NC, again, it signaled that there was unfinished learning. And what it's done is now our students this year who receive those, we are very aware of the support they will need both this year and beyond. And in grade 9 through 12, for our high school students, we knew that the NC meant they had to repeat a course to get that passing grade, to get that credit that they need for graduation. So when we break down the data and where did we land with the number of students who received an NC? So again, remember in the K-8 realm, it means it's not complete. In grades 9 through 12, it signals no credit. And so if we look at our grade bands in students 2 through 5, the number of students who received an NC in at least one course, right? So we had about 46% in our students grades 2 through 5. And then in grades 6 through 12, we were close to 60%. And I think what's important to notice is that as students advanced in grades, the number of NCs did get higher. And we also know that our students with disabilities and our students who are learning English, so our English learners, were impacted in more significant ways than these numbers. So there were higher percentages of those students who received an NC at the end of last year. So when we take a look at that, we really want to now signal, so what are we doing? What did we do? And knowing and anticipating the landscape we are in of the impact of COVID, we immediately knew that we had to look at summer 2021 in a different way. And so we've been talking about this in other places, but I think it's really important to talk about our work in summer 2021 in ways that reflect our grading work. So knowing that we have a number of students who had an NC on their report cards, we increased opportunities for them to come and be with us in the summer. We increased more in-person learning opportunities because we know that our students do better when they can be with us in person. We expanded our offerings. We had longer amounts of time to be with students. We pushed from 5 to, pushing some of our experiences to 5 and 6 weeks in length. We knew that academic recovery was important, but we also wanted to make sure we were thinking about the whole child supports. So again, really intensive and intentional efforts to begin supporting those students who we knew had unfinished learning. At this point, I do want to be able to pass this on to my colleague, Dr. Pfeiffer, who's going to talk a bit about how we really thought about our high school work and credit recovery.
Thanks so much, Dr. Dabrowski. So as Dr. Dabrowski mentioned, we knew we needed to use our summer in really strategic ways in order to support students who had received an NC who still had unfinished learning. And part of this for our high school students was offering 2 3-week in-person sessions, 2 different periods during the day, so students could take 2 classes during that time to really allow them to get content that they hadn't been able to get during the school year. We created a variety of different options for students in order to meet the various student needs. We had a site that started later, so students who needed to work in the morning could get some hours in. We had a site that was specifically for seniors and that had specific supports tailored to their post-secondary transition. We had a virtual program that went for 6 weeks as well. And just in responsiveness to the demand that we saw from our young people for these learning opportunities, we actually opened an additional summer school site in the second session because our young people were signing up and trying to get into classes. You can see in the table to the right the numbers by grade of students who participated in past courses. In incredibly exciting news, the hard work that our young people put in over the summer paid off in really meaningful ways. We were really excited to celebrate with our summer graduates. We had over 500 students who received a diploma or certificate this summer, which, as you can see, is a significant increase, 75% increase from last year, and 120% increase from 2 years ago. For those of you who've attended our summer graduations, we call them our rainbow graduations because students from all across the city wear their school colors in cap and gown, and it really is just an amazing moment to celebrate the perseverance of our young people who may have taken a little bit longer to get through to graduation, but who walk that stage nonetheless and receive that diploma or certificate. We also recognized that we needed to continue to provide support for our young people who received an NC. It wasn't just about the work that we did over the summer. We recognized that we needed to, we needed to be able to support, create supports for this school year as well. Part of that has been amazing work colleagues have done in supporting schools and using diagnostic assessments so that we know where our students are academically and how instruction needs to happen in order to provide continued supports for their learning. We also implemented student learning plans this year. Each student from pre-K to 12 is working with their teacher and their family to co-develop these plans that identify areas for growth, that identify student strengths, that identify student goals, and that help develop a strategy for how the school will support the student in achieving those goals and how the families can help as well. We also implemented accelerated learning, and you heard last month, I believe, from Dr. Steiner, who provided a really great overview of what that accelerated learning model looks like and how we're implementing it here at City Schools. But just as a quick overview, we want to make sure that our students can continue to learn content at grade level while we identify and provide just-in-time supports and skill building for the areas where they may have missed some learning or have unfinished learning from previous years. We also have dedicated time in our schools for small group instruction and personalized learning. These have been used in really creative ways at the elementary, middle, and high school level to ensure that our young people are getting a chance to work on specific skills they need help in. We know we have some schools that are doing peer tutoring, some schools that are pulling small groups to address specific needs that students have in common. And we wanted to make sure that that time was built into the school day for students to receive that support. Additionally, we have started and will begin to increase tutoring, mentoring, and extended learning opportunities for our students. These are being done by schools and vary in ways that are tailored to the needs that they're identifying in their student populations. And then again, we're continuing to offer credit recovery opportunities for our high school students so they can earn those credits that they may have missed in the previous year. Just to pivot just a little bit and to talk a little bit about graduation and the specific policy that governs graduation standards in the district, MSDE has made changes to graduation standards for the state. That those standards are kind of enshrined in COMAR, and we need to make updates to our policy and our regulations specifically to ensure that we are in compliance with the state. To highlight those changes for you, the state has added a 0.5 requirement for health. There already was a 0.5 in place already, so that brings it up to a full credit. And in order to balance that out, the state has also added a 0.5 credit for an elective. So again, an additional 0.5 health credit and then a new 0.5 elective credit. So now students will be earning 22 credits for graduation instead of 21. In terms of implementation, these will be the graduation requirements for the students who are starting 9th grade this year. Another change that MSD made to graduation standards was to specify that students need to complete, students in CTE pathways, I should say, need to complete that CTE pathway. Previously, the state had specified a number of credits, and it was 4 credits that students needed to complete in CTE. The state has now recognized that there are various CTE pathways that only require 3 credits for completion. Well, there are others that require 8 credits for completion. So rather than list a specific number of credits, the state is simply requiring that students complete all the courses in a pathway that they select, and that is how they will meet the career and technical education requirements if students choose to be on that pathway. And so what we would like to do is to align our policy and regulations with board approval, with COMAR, with the state's requirements, and make it clear as we move forward that what the state requires for graduation is certainly the basis for Baltimore City's requirements, and we'll always refer to the state in our policy and regulations as well. So I will pause there. Would love to answer any questions that we could for you all.
Commissioner Cheney?
Yeah, just Dr. Pfeiffer, would you just explain a little bit the how the credit recovery works during the regular school year? Is that evening, after school? I mean, how are you providing that for students?
I really appreciate that question because it is in progress. So right now, schools are currently in this semester offering credit recovery for their students after school. In the majority of cases, those proposals for running credit recovery programs are being approved by a district office team, and then schools get the sign off to run those programs. And those are typically happening right after the school day, in many cases using the benefit of our ESSER extended learning dollars. We are developing opportunities for twilight school or evening school, as you referenced. We ran a pilot of that last year and want to continue that. And also developing plans for Saturday school opportunities for our young people that would be run by the district, so it would be centralized, We wouldn't require each school to try and offer their own Saturday school opportunities. And when we get both the evening school and the Saturday school online, we'll make sure you all get an update on that. But we do want to continue to provide a variety of options for our young people and make sure that they are getting high quality instruction during those times.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Commissioner Griffin, do you have any thoughts or questions?
No questions at this time. For this one, I'm still processing a lot of the stuff, and so I think what's best for me is to do a little bit more thinking and send my questions via email.
Thank you. I know that this is, as you framed for us at the beginning, Chief Dabrowski, Dr. Dabrowski, an unprecedented year, right? But we do have plans in place to support our students moving forward. And would you talk to us a little bit about, I'm not sure if was this the end of the presentation?
Yes.
Right, just a little bit about how you all will be coming back to us to kind of fill us in on what to expect as we end this particular year, but looking, forward to the several years to come. I know that Commissioner Chinya just raised a little bit about, what credit recovery looks like outside of a pandemic year. But talk to us just a little bit more about how you all are planning to come back to just fill us in on analyzing some more of the data and what that data means to how we move forward.
Yep, no, appreciate the question. So we have just this week ended our first quarter. So we are going to be looking very closely to see how our students have done this quarter. And additionally, looking at the second quarter, which brings us to about the end or middle of January. And so we need to collect that and assess sort of where we are and where we're seeing, again, the gaps of where and how students are meeting or not meeting grade level expectations to know where and how does an NC continue to have a space in our work or not, or what adjustments. And that's really important work for us that we want to be thoughtful and strategic on. So we will certainly be coming back to the board, sharing those updates with you. Again, I'll signal back to the work group. The grading work group is continuing to convene and meet, and we'll bring those updates in a timely way. I do want to signal, I think, people say it lightly, and I don't think it is lightly, but the work of recovery is not a work that's accomplished in a semester. And so we are looking at multi-years, and I think the work that Dr. Pfeiffer and her team is doing around really a robust credit recovery as again, multiple strands of how that happens is key. We're also already thinking about summer 2022. What will summer learning look like for our students, and where we can provide even more opportunities for that academic recovery, knowing that we'll potentially have more students who are very comfortable coming back for in-person. And so we want to just continue to build off things that we saw early signs of success. So what we did last summer and growing on that. So I think we have both the immediate work that we'll be bringing back and coming back to the board on around what we're seeing in our data with the grades, our decisions for how we think about NCs going forward, and then some of the long-term work around, again, acceleration work, personalization. All of these things are long-term strategies, knowing that the unfinished learning is going to be work that requires persistence and multiple years of attention.
Thank you, I appreciate that. I just want to extend some more space to any of my colleagues. Commissioner Chinya.
Yeah, thank you. I'm happy to hear the explanation you made, and two things that I had written down come to mind. First of all, I mean, this is great, and thank you for the update that we're getting. But this really brings to my attention the fact that we really need to communicate this much broader and more consistently to the whole school community. I understand the fact that this is not a one semester, 1 quarter, 1 year type of endeavor. I'm not certain that all parents are understanding that yet, or the community. So however we build into the strategy, some consistent way of communicating in a variety of ways. And if that means, even getting to school by school kind of thing. I just think that's important. And then the other is in the list of folks you had in the work group, and Dr. Dabrowski, I'm going to say as a part of just some history and experience from the system myself in looking at the grading policy.
Yep.
I did not hear you refer to parents being a part of that work group. And that may be a component that possibly should be added, I believe, in terms of helping to form the message and help to get the message out for folks to really understand.
Yep. Thank you for that feedback. No, I appreciate that. Yep. I'll definitely take that guidance back. I think as we think about particularly revisiting the NC, we know we're going to have to get a wide range of input from colleagues and our families and our students to understand the way forward on that. So appreciate that signal. Yep.
Okay. Thank you. Mr. Chair, that was it for me. Thank you.
All right, thank you to everyone. Thanks for the presentation, and we look forward to continued updates as they come before this committee and before the board. I do want to also just raise, just very briefly, that the changes to COMAR, I just want to make sure that we're clear, that's law, right? So we have to make sure that our policies are aligned to the law that governs all of the work that we do. So we should be expecting that soon, correct?
That's correct. It will go to policy committee on the 16th and then to the board for review and vote as soon as it's possible so that we can be in alignment with the state.
Gotcha. Thank you all. We are now ready for procurement. We have a few items on our procurement agenda. Mr. Coleman, are you ready for us?
Yes, good afternoon, Commissioner McFadden and fellow commissioners in attendance. I'm Dan Coleman, Director of Procurement. This evening we have 15 items on the agenda. How would you like me to address them individually, or are there questions?
There are a few items on the agenda. I just would, I'm going to ask my colleagues if they have specific questions about any of the letters that are there. If there are not. So does anyone have any questions about any of the letters that were presented to us today?
I do not. This is Commissioner Griffin. I do not have any questions.
I did not have questions either, but one seemed to me we had talked about at the last board meeting. I'm trying to remember whether it was at the executive session or the public session, and that was the one around, and I'm sorry, I'm blanking because it's not in front of me, the middle school, the program that we were extending. Oh, I'm sorry. That dealt with middle schoolers, alternatives.
Is it Angela? I know what you're talking about.
Yes.
Angela Davis. Here's Angela Alvarez to talk about it.
Yeah, I just wanted to be certain that that was the connection from that we had previously. I see Ms. Alvarez.
Yep, I think that is 19.01. That's the Youth Ambassador Leadership Academy.
Right.
So we're seeking to enter. So YALA had operated a program focused on overaged, undercredited middle school students for us for the last 3 years. What we're hoping to do is enter a new agreement with your approval to work with them to support us with middle grades, but also with ninth grade in particular, or high schools that are having some challenges with students actually coming to school and disengaging those students, as well as some of the more serious climate challenges that some schools are having with certain populations of students. They're experts in doing really deep community work and mentoring students. So they would be mentoring. We would work with up to 5 schools this year with them on this contract, and they would mentor around and provide more robust services to around 25 students from each of those school communities who are in the most need of wraparound supports and mentorship and teaching self-advocacy, self-regulation, those sorts of things, as well as connecting families, because we know a lot of times when students are having behavioral challenges in school or not attending school, there's other stressors. This is how their stress is showing up in the school. And so they're really good at connecting families with other organizations that provide wraparound services. And so we see a high need for that for certain school communities. And, they've been a really strong partner. And so that's how we want to leverage that.
Thank you. I think I know we talked about. I just want to make sure that was the connection. So thank you. Okay, that was the only question that I had, Mr. Commissioner McFadden.
Thank you, Chair Emeritus, and thank you, Angela, Ms. Alvarez. Thank you so much for that. I just have a question, 12.10, and it is the contract for tutor. What we don't see in this particular letter and I want to say that it is in the evidence of effectiveness. I'm not really seeing specific impact on why we would be making the increase. So in most of the other letters here, when we're looking at the evidence of effectiveness, we're seeing that direct correlation to the particular program and that impact with some sort of student achievement data. Here, I'm just seeing where the programs were primarily online, how many lessons the students completed, how students rated the sessions. But it doesn't really speak to how, hey Josh, it doesn't really speak to the alignment of impact. Am I making sense? Like my
Yes.
thought process?
Yeah.
Okay.
And I was looking at that on my screen as well. And so I don't want to speak out of turn and make something up right now. I do have some more recent data reports from FEV that I can reference and pass along to Mr. Gant to send over to you and the other commissioners. But I know exactly what you're describing, and I can have our team put together some more robust information in addition to what you see here about really it's the overwhelming demand that this is a high valued partner, has history with our district, is through word of mouth just increasing in demand. But I know exactly what you're describing, Commissioner McFadden, and I can work to compile that for you all.
Yes, because if that is the case, we should also be able to see some correlation to improvement or support for students. So I think that will be helpful to send along prior to this coming to the full board for a vote.
Absolutely.
Thank you. Good afternoon, Commissioner Reed. You're muted. Do you have any? We're on the procurement. Do you have any questions about any of the letters?
No, I'm fine. Play through. Sorry to be tardy. I had another meeting. Thank you.
Got you. It's always good to see you, and it's great to have you. Mr. Coleman, I think that's it for us.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. If I can provide any additional information, please call on me.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Mr. Gant, Christian, is there anyone that has signed up for a public comment in our meeting today? I didn't see anyone on the agenda, but I may have missed something.
No.
Thank you. Commissioners, any final thoughts, any questions, anything for the good of the group? Our next meeting for the Teaching and Learning Committee of the Baltimore City Board of School Commissioners is 2 days before my birthday. I just want to tell everyone that, by the way. We're meeting on December 7th. My birthday is December 9th. I just want to put that out to the group just for the heck of it. But that will be our next meeting. And we're going to focus again on the 3R plan, but particularly as it relates to language arts and mathematics. So we'll be hearing some updates from staff about that. Please encourage members of the public, other members. I know that we have several folks that are here with us today, so welcome and thank you all for joining us. As always, folks, if you have any questions, please reach out and send emails directly to schoolboard@bcps.k12.md.us. If there are any questions or concerns, so that those concerns can be addressed by staff and so that the board can have some attention on those concerns as well. So please feel free to do that. I hope that everyone has a wonderful evening. Stay dry. It is raining and wet outside. And we look forward to seeing you all. We have a meeting this coming Tuesday of the full board. I believe that is November 9th. So we look forward to seeing you all soon. Have a great evening, everyone.
Happy birthday.
It's next month.
Yes.
You got to save it. You got to save it for next month.
Right. Oh,
Take
stay
care,
safe,
everyone.
everyone. Good night.
Bye.
Good night, everyone.
Thank you.